Hi again then guys, and welcome to the 56th installment of GT Masters, once again focusing for this episode on Gran Turismo Sport, and focusing in particular on another one of the new cars featured therein, which all of you guys will be able to get access to very soon. And this car is quite a significant one for the Renault brand on Gran Turismo, because Renault has some pretty good cars, but they've never really been a hugely dominant force. Or actually, they have, but only in Gran Turismo 2, where the best car of the entire Gran Turismo franchise, as far as I'm concerned, was featured. The Renault Espace F1, one of the quickest cars in the game, a vehicle which could genuinely take on anything else around the track. Since then though, and even before then, in Gran Turismo 1, Renault has never exactly been a dominant force in the game. The best they had to offer was basically the Megane, or the Clio V6, or the Clio Trophy. Not bad cars by any means, but not exactly cars which are going to worry most of the other vehicles in the grand scheme of things. With this vehicle's inclusion on Gran Turismo Sport though, that could well change, because this car has a lot of ability, a lot of potential, and it is a good all-round GT car. The vehicle in question is of course the Renault RS.01, and although some people may not know this, Renault in real life actually has ties to Nissan, and not surprisingly then, this vehicle does share Nissan DNA, in particular with the R35 GT-R. It has, among other things, a GT-R engine, but the biggest difference for this car, of course, is that it's mid-mounted instead of front-mounted as it is in the Nissan. Now that engine is of course a 3.8 litre, it's turbo aspirated, and you're putting out good numbers. 561 horsepower, 485 foot-pounds of torque. Now the torque figure in particular for a car like this is very healthy, because typically a mid-engine rear-wheel drive European exotic type GT car, something like an Audi R8 or a Ferrari 458 or an Alfa 4C, wouldn't typically have a huge amount of torque. They tend to go more for high revving power, whereas because this one's using that Japanese turbocharged power lump, well, you've got the torque as well. And when you combine that power and torque into a vehicle which weighs 1171 kilos, which is a very good weight to be working with, that's actually exactly the same as the Alfa Romeo 4C, and of course many of you guys will probably remember that from our Euro Rivals episode from a few weeks back. And that low weight, combined with its pretty decent power, not the best power of the class, but certainly not the worst either, means that you're looking at 479 horsepower per tonne. That's a little bit less than something like a BMW M6, but a little bit more than something like a Mercedes AMG GT. And given the fact that the Mercedes is the most powerful car in this class so far, that's pretty healthy for the Renault. Now, of course, as with all of the Group 3 cars on Gran Turismo Sport for the moment, we don't know what the price of this vehicle is going to be, and we don't know in career mode, etc., how you're going to attain the car and how useful it's going to be. Of course, with the structure of the career mode and the world of Gran Turismo Sport, they are gearing it to be much more friendly towards people who want to support a particular team or a particular car, and trying not to make it so that any one or two vehicles can totally run away within a certain class. There are definitely better and worse cars in each respective class, but they're trying to keep them all as competitive as possible, which is what you'd expect. And in the case of the RS.01, you can definitely feel that. It's a strong all-rounder, and although it's not the best in any particular way, it is a very good car in each way. It's strong enough in a straight line to easily keep up with the pack. The cornering ability is interesting. It's different to the GT-R, although it shares its DNA, and it's something more akin to something like a Ferrari 458, that mid-engine rear-drive layout, the very mid-centric, almost GT1 style shape which the car has, also reminiscent of vehicles like the Mosler MT900. And although, of course, it doesn't have the same kind of dominating potential as a Mosler, it's definitely more than good enough to give you victories. That's, of course, the whole point of the different classes in the game. But still, there are certain classes and certain vehicles in them where you feel you might not win under most circumstances. Maybe the car feels a little bit slower than the rest of the pack, and there are some which do feel like that. They're not bad, and they can all still win, but there are definitely some which don't feel as strong. This one, I would say, is maybe in the top third of the pack overall, and the top third of the Group 3 class. It's not the absolute best but it's definitely up there with them. It's not hugely powerful, but it's more than powerful enough, and it's not the lightest, but it's definitely among the lighter vehicles in the class. As far as the car goes on its own, for handling, performance, that kind of thing, it's, as I said earlier, totally different to a GT-R. It feels nothing like that car at all. It sounds very much like it, and of course it has the power and torque delivery of one, but the handling is completely different. For those who have no point of reference for Gran Turismo Sport, I would say that, for instance, on Gran Turismo 6, something which might feel similar to this would perhaps be the Acura NSX LM race car. It's not a vehicle which everyone uses, but it is one of the more affordable race cars on Gran Turismo 6, and the feel of the car, the weight distribution, the way it handles, the way it performs, with different power and weight, of course, but it feels, I would say, fairly similar to this car. It has a similar shape, similar style of driving. It feels a little bit meatier, although it is a lightweight vehicle technically, and it feels smoother. It's definitely not a twitchy car. If anything, it gears itself more towards being a little slippery rather than twitchy, and there is a big difference between the two. Something like a Mazda 787B I would call twitchy, whereas something more like a Cobra or a TVR, for instance, I'd call that more a slippery car. Now, this doesn't handle like a TVR. It's much more beginner-friendly than that, but of the two, it's closer to that end of the spectrum. You're more likely to get the tail out on this car than you are to lose the front end. That's the way the handling is, and that's not too surprising for a mid-engine car anyway. So overall, this is a vehicle which I think is definitely going to be a fan favourite. Most of the new cars on new games tend to be, so that pretty much goes without saying. But for those who do like the Renault brand, myself included, you're not going to be disappointed. This is a strong car to represent Renault with. It definitely has the potential to win races, and I would say it's a good all-rounder. But that's it for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next week, and as always, thanks for watching.